Welcome to my first episode of Shakespeare's Sonnets. I'm Peter Matthews. This series of teaching sessions will be unlike any other work since the publication of the sonnets in 1609 AD. For centuries, scholars have debated what Shakespeare's sonnets might have meant, yet nobody to date has discovered the true sources used by the poet to give any tangible understanding until I discovered some of the sources between 1996 and 2016, and I finally managed to find all of the Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Old Mantuan, and Italian sources used by the poet in 2016. We are finally able to present some real explanations as to who wrote the sonnets, their religion, why they wrote the sonnets, and a graphic walk through the poet's ancestry throughout the ages. Prior to that, scholars have simply offered course after course of conjecture, speculation, and guesswork. In this series, we will investigate my discoveries regarding parallel poetry that contains secret codes to unlock the sonnets from the very same source documents. The first quarto footnotes that determine chapter breaks not picked up by any other scholar. Who wrote the sonnets? Why they wrote the sonnets? The underlying themes of the sonnets. The major sources to the sonnets. I'll discuss my dissertation, which is equivalent to 6 doctorate degree theses. I'll discuss each chapter break and each sonnet, delving into their true meaning. Without the original sources of the sonnets, it is merely theories and conjecture like Mark Twain explained. I'll present evidence from my dissertation and from my unpublished manuscripts never seen before. I began this journey in 1996 when my wife's grandfather came over to visit from England after his wife, Ada Bassano, passed away. Albert asked us to sit down because he had some secrets to share with us that he said would rock the foundations of English history. This meeting changed the course of our lives forever, and I must say, for the better. Historically, scholars have believed the 154 sonnets, called Shake-speares Sonnets, are divided into Fair Youth of a Man, which is sonnets 1 to 126, and the Dark Lady sonnets 127 to 152, and the last 2 sonnets, a Greek anthology, with a rival poet within the Fair Youth from sonnets 78 to 86. Well, I'm here to reveal that 400 years of scholars were wrong because they had not discovered the source documents used by the poet. Now, looking at verse 1 from Sonnet 1, we find, "From fairest creatures we desire increase," which scholars should have considered them as religious sonnets because this was a command from God to Noah after the flood. Now, in the opening verse of Sonnet 2, we find, "When 40 winters shall besiege thy brow," which refers to Abraham being 40 years old when he became aware of his Creator. Then we have Sonnet 11. We find, where are we? Here we are here. And 80 year would make the world away, which actually comes from Psalm 90 verse 10, which reads, "The days of our years be in all 80 years and 10. That's the Bishop's Bible of 1568, where even our best years are filled with pain for 70 years or 80 years, even 90 years. Then we fly away," referring to the world to come, or the new Zion, or the new Jerusalem for those who don't understand the language. surely we should have considered that they had a significant biblical influence. Now, what about in Sonnet 60, where it says, "Crooked eclipses 'gainst his glory fight"? Because this actually speaks about the mixed multitude travelling with the Israelites that did in fact fight against the glory of the Blessed Holy One and cause the breaking of the blue sapphire stone tablets. I examined all of these religious imageries and found the original sources used by the poet. They are not broken down into 3 parts or 4 parts as scholars have taught for centuries. They are in fact broken down into 16 parts and open from Genesis 1:1, though the primary source is not the Bible per se, but a Jewish mystical commentary of the Torah. I will say from the outset that these multi-layered Zoharic Shir Zahav, or golden poems, sonnets, are comparable to the Kabbalistic works of Rabbi Isaac Luria, though in this case the sonnets investigate Bat Torah, or women of Torah, the prominent dark ladies of the Bible involved in the redemption of Israel. Lilith, Eve, Naamah, Tamar, and the Shulamite queen of King Solomon, which is really an expression for the daughters of Jerusalem. They are essentially Jewish Kabbalistic sonnets like that of the 11th century Sephardic Jewish Kabbalist Solomon ibn Gabirol. The 2 major sources of the sonnets preclude William Shakespeare being the author because he couldn't read Aramaic and Hebrew. I will explain all these matters in due course. This is merely an introduction to give you an understanding of the depth of my research over a quarter of a century. My first commentary of Shakespeare's sonnets was published on the 21st of December 2020, and the second volume is almost complete to Sonnet 105. The final volume is 1/3 complete. This is because the Dark Lady sonnets had to be understood prior to me writing my dissertation in Volume 1. I have decoded all of the poet's Hebrew and Aramaic secret codes on cosmology, the nature of the soul, the afterlife, the angelic realm, eschatology, the Israelite experience on Mount Sinai, or Shavuot, Jewish law, the tabernacle, the erotic aspects of the feminine divine, the erotic story of the rose that connects to the poet's hometown, and the prophetic Dark Lady sonnets on the Shulamite of King Solomon and the age of the woman that we have recently entered into. The secret codes to unlock the sonnets are actually found in Emilia Bassano's 1611 Salve Deus Rex Judaeorum, or Hail God, King of the Jews. And the crescendo to the sonnets, yes, it doesn't finish at Sonnet 154. The crescendo is found in the description of Cookham as part of Salve Deus Rex Judaeorum, which is a prophetic work on the companions in the Garden of Eden, with overlays from another Zoharic portion on the luminous darkness with the arrival of Adam in the Garden of Eden, the canopies, and the prayer and songs to ensconce Shekinah. This precludes Shakespeare because he was a Christian. He was buried in the Church of the Holy Trinity at Stratford-upon-Avon and never studied Aramaic or Hebrew to be able to write these sonnets. Shakespeare's sonnets are 154 consecutive poems, first published in quarto edition on the 20th of May 1609 by Thomas Thorpe, which was entered into the stationer's register as a book called Shake-speares Sonnets. The front cover. The title is displayed Shake-speares with the caption never before imprinted. Like the copyright laws today, every new book published in England had to be registered at the Stationers' Hall and sent to the Bodleian Library to protect themselves from copyright infringements. We have no idea how many copies of the sonnets were printed in 1609, though there are at least 13 known extant copies in existence today. There may well be more in private collections. The original sale price of the sonnets was 1 shilling, which was quite expensive for a quarto edition. A quarto book is basically formed from folding a sheet of printing paper into 4 rather than into 2 for a folio edition. The condition of these 13 extant copies is surprisingly pristine, which suggests the sonnets were not popular in their day. These 154 golden poems are actually traditional Hebrew sonnets of 14 lines in iambic pentameter, except for sonnets 99 and 126. Sonnet 99 has 15 lines and sonnet 126 has 12 lines, both for very good reason. Sonnet 99 discusses the spiritual descendants of Ishmael, who was 15 when jealousy began to take hold of him. Sonnet 126 is about the hooks, or vavim in Hebrew, or the 2-letter vavs, meaning 2 sixes, as hooks on the columns of the palace of the King of Kings. It is unsurprising that Salve Deus Rex Judaeorum, or Hail God King of the Jews, holds the keys to unlock the sonnets from the Zohar and the Mishnah in Aramaic and Hebrew. Now to the title of Shakespeare's sonnet, which has been debated for centuries, yet Emilia Bassano Lanier left us a secret code over 400 years ago in Salve Deus Rex Judaeorum. And she wrote, that we with the eternity might rise, this precious Passover feed upon, O Queen. Let your fair virtues in my glass be seen. This line, fair virtues in my glass be seen, refers to the 10 Sephirot in the Tree of Life in Jewish Kabbalah revealed in Sonnet 5, which we will cover in a later video. The precious Passover refers to the day of reckoning, when the Messiah returns and the daughters of Jerusalem attend the marriage supper of the Lamb, when the Queen, who is Shekinah, rises, for it is written, they will try to escape the terror of the Lord and the glory of his majesty as he rises to shake the earth. Isaiah 2:21. Now, where does the spears come from? It's also in Isaiah chapter 2. In Isaiah 2:4, Isaiah foretold how Christ will mediate wars and they will hammer their spears into pruning shears to prune the vine. And sometime during the age of the woman, we will no longer conscript young men and teach them the art of war. To be clear, though, this passage does not refer to the period prior to the return of Christ. It is when Christ returns for his millennial reign. It also relates to the essential teaching of not being involved in idol worship, for one's neshama, which is one of 3 parts breathed into us by Holy Spirit, can become defiled and ruin our opportunity to join the Messiah in the marriage supper of the Lamb, which is discussed in detail in Sonnet 34. This is the true meaning behind the title Shakespeare's Sonnets. Had scholars understood the meaning, they might have understood the sonnets were concealed dissertation under a pseudonym. John Hudson was at least correct when he wrote the writer had not used their own true name, was instead using Shakespeare's as a pseudonym. Because if they did reveal their true Israelite identity, the Bassano-Nazi family would never have survived. In my opinion, A.W. Rowse began the disgusting slur against the character of Emilia Bassano as a dark lady having relationships with William Shakespeare in 1973. Dr. Rowse, who'd written many books, it says, on Elizabethan England and Shakespeare, says, "I did not think it likely that the Dark Lady would ever be discovered, still less discovered by me." Well, Mr. Rowse, I'm sorry that that was not the case. You did not discover the true sources, and you did not discover what they really mean. And all you did was put out some disgusting slurs against the name of Emilia Bassano. Then along came Roger Pryor and David Lasocki, who misinterpreted the meaning of Sonnet 137 as Emilia Bassano being one of two candidates of Shakespeare's mistress, the Dark Lady. And look, I'll give it to them that they said one of two, where they asserted Shakespeare wrote of the mistress, the wide world's commonplace and the bay where all men ride. As we flick over to the actual sonnet, it actually reads in context, "Be anchored in the bay where all men ride." Now this actually refers to the eyes of falsehood, or the bad eyes of the sullied or the promiscuous, who will be destroyed in the great battle. It certainly does not refer to Emilia Bassano. So now we're going to discuss what everyone's been waiting to see. And this is from my academic work of the sonnets. And we're going to look at the major sources. The first being the Mantuan 1557-8, Aramaic and Hebrew, Tikkun Zohar, rectification of splendor, commonly known as Tikkun. Now this was supervised, the printing, by Rabbi Isaac Bassano of the Mantuan Synagogue. It's probably the third one on the list. In fact, this number 2 is actually the primary source for the sonnets, and that is the Mantuan 1558-60, Aramaic and Hebrew, Sefer HaZohar al-HaTorah, or Book of Zohar on the Torah, literally meaning radiance of the Torah. And look, it's just called the Zohar of Mantua normally. It's in 3 volumes, and yes, printing was supervised by Rabbi Isaac Bassano. That is the primary source. There is some variations in the Cremona edition, and that's number 3, but it is only used so many times during. Now, number 4 is the second primary source, and this was the source that I found in 2016 that I was waiting on to connect the dots. I'd originally found the Zohar, and I found a number of the others, many others prior. There's over 200 sources, but these are the main 2 sources of the sonnets. And that is the 1597 Zohar Adash, and it is quite an incredible work. And in there it is the erotic tone of the Song of Songs, Ruth and Lamentations particularly, It's magnificent work, but it does start from Bereshit, which is basically Genesis. And I'll discuss all of this in the next episode, which delves into what each sonnet actually connects to and what are the references and everything. Now, Midrash Hanilim and Shir Hashirim, whilst a lot of it is in the original Zohar Dash, some of the editions did not come out until later. And this is the interesting part, because many of them didn't come out until the 1658 edition. So the Bassanos must have had an early manuscript on this that they actually used. And this is what's really interesting about it. And I'll run through the rest fairly quickly. The Aramaic edition of Yesod Shirim, it's a 1559 edition. It's on the Book of Ruth. The 1560 Haggadah of Mantua. Now, one of the, I think it's either sonnet 19, 20 or 21, around there, is on the Haggadah of Mantua, a telling of Passover, and it was printed by Rabbi Isaac Bassano. The 1331 or 14th century Sefer HaBahia, the 2nd or 3rd century Sefer Yeritza, Book of Creation, Daniel Bomberg's Venetian edition of the Babylonian Talmud, Maimonides' Law of Idolatry, Mishnah Torah, and Yesod HaTorah. Abraham Zacuto's 1565 Book of Lineage. It has the Book of Lineage of the Kabbalists throughout history, and the Bassanos and their teachers are in there. Rabbi Isaac Luria that I mentioned earlier, and his scribe actually transcribed it all down for him, and that's Etz Hayim, or Tree of Life. There's various volumes of it. I have a number of them. There's quite a number of different commentaries he wrote. Eliezer of Worms. Now, these are the secrets of Raziel that I mentioned earlier. Now, this is quite interesting. Secrets of the Third Temple. It is written actually by Rabbi Moses Lazzato, who penned the later work, Secrets of the Temple. Although there is an earlier work that is not quite the same. This was taught to him by Rabbi Isaiah Bassano in Venice, who taught him Kabbalah from a young age. And it's quite interesting read. This particular works was used in the sonnets. So there you go, connecting the rabbinic family to our family. And I found a image of the painter family, which connects to our family as well. They were also Jewish, even though they painted a lot of. They are depicted as having Passover with their kippah and eating the Passover with the cedar and so on. So very interesting. This is the poet Solomon Ibn Gibberol that I spoke about before, and his work, particularly on Kedah Malkut, on the crowns of Malkut. Demonology by King James. Yes, she did use it, but she really wrote against his work. Dante Alighieri's La Commedia and Inferno. And yes, that is why she wrote it under a pseudonym. Ovid's Metamorphose, Virgil's The Aeneid, and Toldot Yeshua, which she also wrote against. And Tiferet Yisrael is the last one there on the list. Now, these are the major sources, keep in mind, in Volume 1. And Tiferet Yisrael is basically meaning the glory of Israel, the beauty of Israel, and this was by the Maharal of Prague, or Rabbi Judah Lowen, which most people have heard of. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel for many more videos on the sonnets to come, and have a wonderful day. Bless you.